Thanks for tuning in. This is episode 4 of CappaTime. And I'm sorry, if I jump across too many topics at once, but you can see there's two ways to do it. Keep your interest or just get boring and spend, 3 months explaining to you every detail of how I know what I know. Let's just say I saw it and absorbed it in a matter of seconds. Let that answer your question for now. But where we left off, we were doing the second law of On, and we showed that 60-base math is time and space are curved. The second law tells us time and space are curved. Yeah, we get all the accolades of Einstein. It also tells us that 432 is a universal measuring stick, and we should be using that as a broadcast range. But the ISS will never agree. They've been presented with truckload after truckload of evidence that shows that 432 is the proper frequency, and they have refused to either vote on it or have declined, voted against it. So you need to do something. I don't know what to do, but we can't get to the next stage of our evolution without all of us switching to 432. If nothing more, it'll mellow the planet out. So how could it be bad? Just change the standard to A equals 432, not A equals 440, and the world will be saved. All right, that's enough about the second law. This is the third law of On. And the third law of On, strangely enough, the first one was science, as above, so below. It's how we categorize everything. The second one is how do I measure everything, right? So the first law, right, if we were to come in here from another dimension, the first law you would ask is, what is this place? Where am I? And the first law helps answer it. Everything can be categorized. There's no one of a kinds. So we can categorize everything you see, hear, touch, feel, and so on and so forth, and detect. And the second one says, how do I measure this place so that I can act upon it? And we have 10 and 60 for everything I can see and time and space around me, right? 10 and 60, 60 and 10. Learn them right once and learn them again. Right? Got it. Oh, that's right. 10 for all that I can see and 60 for time and space around me. There's one more, right? It takes 4 with 3 and 2 and 1. The law of On sure is fun. Something like that. Again, these are what I remember from what I saw. But there's something lunatic like that burned into my brain. Anyway, so we need to work on that. We need to get to 432. And that's very, very important. Now, I don't quite remember much of the limerick for 3, and I don't want to confuse you, but let's go into it. The first law is math, the second law is science. The third thing we would do if we magically appeared here into this dimension, we'd have science, math, and then our log, our history. Both as what does it mean to have a life cycle here, and what is going to be the life cycle of the whole entire one group of us, the civilization, if you will. And it's the zodiac. Now, most people say, wait a minute, the zodiac is astrology. Again, no. Remember, during the purge, anybody knew 13 stages of life and there's 13 zodiac symbols. Anybody who knew that was a dead man. Because if you knew there were 13 stages of life, you would know there's no heaven and hell. It's reincarnation. That's why they killed them. Anybody who knew reincarnation was killed, and anybody who knew there were 13 stages of life would have to know that it's reincarnation. So the point is we follow, and it's the zodiac. The zodiac symbols, and there are 13 of them, are the stages of life from birth to death. Simple as that. Of both one individual, measured in Fibonacci, and we'll go through the stages, and then we'll tell you what it means on the bigger scale for the whole human civilization. By definition, it must grow in the same stages, in the same order as one individual. Must. As above, so below, the Babylonian clay tablets tell us. That when you figure, in order to solve 3, you must know 1, it says. You must apply as above, so below. So if it tells the story of one individual from birth to death, and you'll see it does, then it's telling the tale of the evolution of the whole human race to the next age. Okay, and you'll see. It is our history broken into ages, where the individual goes Fibonacci. Our first stage of life is 0. Our second stage of life is 1. We're the crawling, teething infant. We're practicing our hunting skills. At 1, shortly after you mastered crawling and have been teething, you become the walking, talking toddler. You become a walking, talking toddler. And then at 2, you become the terrible 2s, scorpion. What? I said Scorpion. Oh, yeah, the zodiac. Well, Capricorn is the first stage. What are you before birth? And Capricorn covers death to birth. So anybody who thinks that prenatal life should be a separate stage is wrong. Death to rebirth is sacred. All right? So it's against abortion by a very rule. But it says it's up to a mother's choice. So I'm not passing any judgment. Mother's choice, in my opinion. But what it's telling us is the life cycle is the same. You're in the waters of mom's womb, right? You're a water creature. Am I wrong? Mom's water breaks. You navigate the waters of life, and you were born, already knowing how to feed yourself. Every newborn mammal, whether you're a goat or a human or a monkey, knows how to root, latch, and suckle. Look for the food source, latch onto it, and suckle food in. So they're intelligent mammals which have navigated the waters of life, and that's Capricorn. Capricorn is the first stage of life. It's the newborn, and it's 0. At 0 in the Fibonacci sequence, you were born. Okay? And remember, it's a repeating cycle, which tells us it's reincarnation. But let's go to the next cycle. At 1, the very first stage of life, and the first thing in Fibonacci, you start with 0 and 1. At 1, you practice the skills needed to feed yourself. The most basic of all things. And every mammal practices the skills needed to feed themselves. Kittens pounce. Dogs tear and chew and shred. Monkeys swing. Birds flap their wings and peck. Humans forage, where they race around at a 1-year-old, racing around on all fours, climb up on a coffee table and clear off that coffee table and eat whatever it thinks is delicious. It's practicing its foraging skills. It's the hunter. That's Sagittarius, the hunter. That's the second zodiac symbol. And please note, as I go, you said, wait a minute, Joe, you started with Capricorn and you went backwards. Well, actually, I'm going clockwise in our sky. The zodiac goes clockwise, and I'll get into all that later. I want to first tell you all about the symbols. But the zodiac, and I'll come back to it. We'll get into a better description later on. First, I want to show you the stages of life and how the stages of life are the zodiac symbols, and then we'll get into all the zodiac details before we get into the bigger picture. So at 0 and at 1, you become the Sagittarius, the hunter. Also at 1, as soon as you've mastered, you've now a walking, talking toddler. You have mastered your tongue. That's the symbol, Ophiuchus. We ignore it because when you go backward through the constellations, but following the months, it only occupies 1 week around the end of October. We ignore it. First week of November, we just ignore it. Okay, but that's how it works. And Ophiuchus is the walking, talking toddler. He's standing and proudly holding a snake. Get it? And then at 2, you're the terrible 2s. You're the Scorpion. You strike out and attack. And anybody who's seen a terrible 2 kid having a tantrum, a meltdown that nobody can cure, there's the terrible 2s for it. It's terrible. Kids learn to have freakouts if they don't get what they want. That's an unfortunate stage of life. But they also yell at their parents because their parents keep physically manipulating them over and over and over again. Leave me alone. And the baby screams and makes it stop. Make it stop. Right? So they scream at your parents. They strike out and attack. They're the Scorpion. All right? So that's 0, 1, 1, 2. At 3, right? Add the numbers together. That's Fibonacci. 0 and 1, add them together, you get 1. At 1 and 1, you get 2. At 1 and 2, you get 3. At 3, you become the measuring child. Every child, no matter where you are around the world, they all know what this means at this age. They have learned that they are this many years old. Some don't at first know what that means, but they know they're this many. They're learning to count and measure the world. They name things. They repeat what you say. They're learning the world. They're balancing the world. Libra the scales. Libra the scales. They've become the measuring child. Do you understand? Libra the scales, the measuring child. Then at 5, we introduce them to society. Virgo the virgin. They start school. Even Sumerian kids, 4,000, 6,000 years ago, went to school at 5. It's a stage of life. We introduce them to society. They start their social life brand new, fresh, and innocent with no social identity whatsoever. Virgo the virgin, Virgo the maiden, depending on how you want to call it. And that's where we have a remnant, okay? And that's at 5, and they start school. They start their social identity. Then at 8 comes Leo the lion. The child now, every 8-year-old becomes concerned with their coif. They become concerned with their hair. Either they want it short, they don't want it cut, they want it styled a certain way. All 8-year-olds have that. And they travel on a gang of friends and they're very prideful. Your son roars like a lion at the age of 8. And that's what we mean. Leo, the lion. That's the 8-year-old. You start social activities and you're traveling around a gang or pack or a very prideful group of friends. Pride. Group of lions is a pride. Now you understand? Then the next stage, right? Follow the Fibonacci. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. The next stage will be 13. 13 is the danger years. Teenager. They're the danger years, ladies and gentlemen. It's the age of Cancer the crab. Why? Because when you're a teenager and you're experimenting with the outside world for yourself for the first time, you must be careful not to step on a crab. You must beware the dangers lurking in the waters of life. Because teenagers are going to experiment with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And we've all heard of tragedy. We've all heard of tragedy. Kid died in a car accident or doing a stupid stunt. Or overdosed. Or drunk himself to death. Right? Or did stupid things that could screw up their future. Teenage pregnancies, criminal records. Am I wrong? Permanent damage to the physical body. Am I wrong? So these are the danger years. We have religious services all over the world declaring you an adult, in the Western world, declaring you an adult at 13. Now you know why. It's a sacred number. And that's why bar and bat mitzvahs are at 13, and that's why confirmations at 13. You are now an adult. Have some self-respect. Have some self-responsibility when you go out and test the worlds of life for yourself. But we don't teach it to our kids that way. And we're always worried about our kids being out driving for the first time, whether they're going to make it home alive, because we don't train them to be careful enough. We've got to train them to be careful during the danger years. You want to make it through those first the 13 to 21. You got to make it through the tough years. And that's why college graduation's around 22, just about in time. It fills in. Why is the year 18 significant? Because 1 and 8 is 9, and 9 sacred math is God. So that's why. And now I remember I was going to tell you about the other thing. But we'll go back to it later. So now we get the stages. Now 21, the next number, is the marriage years. What's the zodiac symbol? Gemini. A man and woman embracing, forming one entity. Marriage. That's what Gemini is. It's marriage. But you don't have to marry a person. You could marry a hobby or marry a profession. That's why it's called engaging a profession and engaging a hobby. You marry them. I have a friend, been a seller since day one. He's married to it. All right? And sometimes divorces happen because a spouse can't choose from their career over their spouse, right? So one marriage wins, so to speak. So it's always a balancing act. But so you get the idea of the marriage years. And that's Gemini. And when you go to the next stage, it depends on when you got married during the marriage years and when you had kids. So 21 plus, let's call it. It's just a little boop in the spiral. Fibonacci is the math for a perfect spiral. This is a little notch in that spiral. That's all it is. So it's a spiral. And this is a little notch in the spiral. 21 plus is the age of Taurus the bull, new parents. Your lives are completely wrapped and required to be around rules. Remember I told you before about the age of Taurus the bull for humankind? Rules, rules, rules. Follow the rules or else. Because if you don't follow the rules, you got a screaming child on your hand. Burp, feed, change, wet, dark, eat, bop, boop. If you don't do it and on a right schedule, you got trouble. So you must follow the rules. And every new parent wants to tell their mother and father how to hold a grandchild. As if they just can't help themselves. New parents, rules, 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 rules. My daughter and son-in-law, I think shoes off in their house, and God forbid I forgot. I took one step too many. They were out washing the floor. Oh my God. So new parents, okay? And no knocking them, not knocking them. It's just what new parents do. And then after that, your child grows up. And when your child goes, becoming the crawling, teething infant, starting around 1, becoming confirmed by 2, and a matter of policy by 3, you begin to negotiate with the child. You have no choice. You offer bait and reward. Finish your vegetables, you can have dessert. Clean up your toys, you can go out and play. Right? Follow the rules and you can be rewarded. And you'll see, for humankind, that's the Aries religions. That's Judaism. Follow the rules. Follow God's commandments. Follow the rules and you'll be okay. And that's what age of Aries the Ram is. It's the age of parents of toddlers. Okay? Now you go to the next stage. You're negotiating, and you also set reward system, and you negotiate, just like a ram must negotiate but fast cliff. So and you must as a parent during that time when you must be like the shepherd of your flock. You know, all these little kids running around. You're trying to corral them on in, don't run off too far, and whatever have you, right? Stay on the property. You try to corral, you try to shepherd, right? So you try to be either the shepherd or the male ram. Well, the next stage is Pisces, the fish. Now, for humankind, that started in 148 BCE. But it's the age of the fish, and the two fishes' tails are tied together. What age is that for a human? That is, your kid has started school. It starts when your children hit 5. You are now locked into your child's school age for the next umpteen years, 18 years or so. You are locked into your child's, or 13 years, whatever it is. You're locked into it. All right, it's 13 years, right? You go 5 to 8, 13. And that's why at 18 you graduate. 1 and 8 is 9, so that's why you're eligible to graduate. But you start at 5 and you go 13 years. Get it? So now you know why. But anyway, you go through this stage of life and you are locked into your child's school age. That's why we call a group of fish a school, because when you were Pisces, you're locked into your children's school age. If they're in 3rd grade, you go into the 3rd grade bake sale, the 3rd grade parade, the 3rd grade play. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? And during this age, you pick up tasks. You become soccer coach or brownies leader, right? Or you go on the planning board or whatever, right? You help the society move. You help your school and your district go. And that's being a member of a flock of fish, a school of fish. And that's Pisces. And that lasts from 21. That starts around 34. And that lasts until about 55. At 55, you hit the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is a man pouring water out of a pitcher. And all depictions of Aquarius show the water splashing. It's an age where you get sick and tired of doing what you do. You hit the midlife crisis. You get sick and tired of doing what you're doing. I know I'm good and I'm successful and I've been playing poker every night for 14 years. I'm just tired of playing poker every Friday night. Nothing to do with it. I just need to change, right? So you stop doing all the things that make you sick and tired, or else you're in trouble. You reinvent yourself. You break away by force or by otherwise. Your kids are now gone. They're in college. You don't even see those people you used to see 4 or 5 times a week for the last 13 years. They're gone. Or you lost a job, or a divorce, or a spouse dies, or a child dies. Something could screw up the age during the age of this. But you come to the age of Aquarius and you are forced into change, and you must reinvent yourself in a healthier ethos. Wine, women, and song become yoga, exercise, and vitamins. Got it? Okay, so that's the age of Aquarius. And it's the age of enlightenment, because if you don't fix your ways, you may not be here tomorrow for you. So it's an age of enlightenment because most people come. That's why they start yoga and exercise, right? They want to live longer. They have to reevaluate their life. They realize sometimes silence is better. You calm down, you reevaluate, and start appreciating everything all over again. And it's also about the same time you start hitting grandparenthood. Strange enough how that works, isn't it? Okay, now, if you should live, Aquarius starts at 55. The next number would be add 34 to it, 89. If you make it to 89, you now look like an infant again. You've got no hair. You're wrinkly, curled up in a fetal position, require health bathing, require help going to the bathroom, having changing your diapers, and require help feeding. You return to Capricorn. And there's your zodiac symbols. So in 1 year, the zodiac goes through all 12 of the zodiac symbols, but our calendar goes backwards. The zodiac, the way I've told you, is clockwise. The calendar is backwards. So if you go clockwise through the zodiac, it's all the stages of one human's life replayed in 1 year. But it's also the story of the whole human race. And it says this must start in Capricorn too. It must start in Capricorn as well. Well, where the human goes by Fibonacci, the whole human race goes in increments of 2160 years. And we have Plato and Hipparchus to thank for us knowing that. Hipparchus realized you don't measure the ages of mankind, our history, in the sides of the constellations because they are all different sizes. You measure it with mathematical precision of 2160 years. Mankind goes through these ages every 2160 years. So if Pisces started in 148, the age of the rainbow started in 2012. And we saw all the hippie children in the 70s signaling the coming of the rainbow, right? They're wearing tie-dye of peace and flowers, right? The days of all the colors are welcome, are coming. And they're here. The rainbow age is here. So you see how it works. And we'll get into that in another episode, the bigger picture. But the idea of the human life cycle is replayed in the zodiac. So it is our life cycle. It's math, science, math, history, our life cycle. But it tells us that death, Capricorn, the final stage of life, and rebirth are the same thing. For those of you keeping score at home, that means it's reincarnation. So if all the other laws of honor are true, then the third law must also be true. It must be reincarnation. And now you know why all the Gnostics were killed. Now you know why everybody who knew 13 stages of life were killed as witches. Everybody who did magic mushrooms was killed as well. Anybody with any connection to the past was killed during the purge. And that's why at 343 they put a truce. No Christian religious sects killing each other, as long as you're agnostic. And now you know why you don't know all these three things. We'll talk about the bigger picture in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to call that the third law of On Part 2. And then you're going to see, when I tell you Part 2, all the things that come out of it, including how the real year is 23/7/71. Stay tuned.